This is the worst raid ever! Oh my god, ICC waiting room, lol. It takes 20 minutes to complete. Actually, I kinda like TOGC. Okay, so controversial video here. While it's certainly not a top tier raid like Karazhan, Ulduar, or even something like Black Temple, it doesn't fall on the level of Mount Hyjal with its annoying trash waves, or Molten Core with its one mechanic bosses. TOGC has its upsides and downsides, and depending on what you want out of the game, you may or may not agree with me. Please don't dislike this video just yet. We'll be going over several categories and kind of analyzing this raid, starting with the bosses. For as much crap as the instance gets for being a cakewalk, at least from a healing perspective, most of the fights are actually pretty fun. The Northern Beast involves a lot of tank damage between stacking impales and enraged worms. You have to heal idiot melee players who don't know how to run to the tank with a debuff, and getting huge rapture procs on Ice Howl makes this fight a blast to heal. It's just infuriating to have a wipe due to people not moving debuffs together on worms, or someone who can't dodge the Ice Howl crash. While the fight is rather simple to DPS, overall, it's not too bad for the first boss. Teraxis. Okay, yeah, fair enough, not a great and fun fight. It's basically the trash mob of the instance. It falls over faster than the actual summoning part, and without posing a real threat to the raid. Basically, it's an even easier version of Loot Reaver. The PvP fight. This fight lets you see which of your players are keyboard turners, don't understand utility or defensive cooldowns, or well, just positioning in general. It's not a fight where you can just zone out and mash your rotation, like 80% of fights to this point. Even if you don't like PvP, it's nice to have a fight that isn't sit still and zug-zug. This fight having varied comps adds some variance from week to week as well. I personally really like this fight as a healer. We get to compete to see who gets the most dispels, just to have melee still complain they weren't frame 1 removed from a slower stun. I can proudly say that I dominate this competition. And don't just say it's due to Mass Dispel, that shit sucks without hit gear. Overall, it's my second favorite fight of the instance. Twins. This is a fun fight to soak orbs, and there's a constant damage going out to heal, kind of similar to Assembly of Iron, where you have that voltage debuff going out and dealing 3000 damage to the raid every second. I will say it probably isn't super fun for DPS who get stuck soaking orbs. Overall though, the fight isn't too complicated. An extra mechanic or two wouldn't have hurt. Maybe something where ads had to be dragged to the opposite portal to be killed, or just a mechanic that force swaps the portals for players, as most of them just sit on one portal of the opposite color and just burn the boss till it's dead. Anub'arak. It's unironically a great fight. It's not overly difficult like a Maru or Yogg 0, but you do get some real progression here. Honestly, this is where I like to see the difficulty set at. It's going to take 10 to 25 wipes to get down for a lot of groups, whether you did some stuff on PTR, watch guides, or whatnot, just to get a feel for the fight. But once you do get the fight down, it doesn't have crazy RNG mechanics that still make it difficult, like Twin Eridar and Sunwell Plateau with conflagging tanks to make threat an issue, or timing runes on Iron Council and Ulduar, where you would get the DPS rune out and then immediately the damaging rune would go on top of it due to him having the cooldowns right next to each other. Once you've learned the mechanics of this fight, it's very repeatable. For the actual fight, tanks have to deal with hard-hitting ads and the boss while positioning to avoid burrowers. Healers have to keep tanks alive, while healing very specifically in the last phase for penetrating cold and not healing leech, while DPS, well, they have to stop pumping and dodging spikes sometimes. An extra mechanic or two would have made this a truly challenging fight, but it's tougher than the instance gets credit for. Overall, yes, the fights are pretty easy, especially on 10-man mode, but there's enough challenge in this fight as pushing for a 50 attempt remaining run has some stress to it, but it isn't as janky or frustrating as a no-death max run. A rewarding endeavor that doesn't punish a whole raid if one person messes up. Definitely the ideal way to handle these kinds of achievements and runs. Could TOGC be a bit more challenging? Yes, it would be preferred, but regarding the difficulty, every instance doesn't have to be as hard as Sunwell Plateau, Ulduar, or even something like SSC TK, Lady Bash, and Kel'Thas. A large component of the classic player base is more casual, where they aren't watching 10 guides, or spending a full day on the PTR practicing before a raid comes out. They want to log on, hang out with their friends or pugs, and then go kill some bosses for pixel loot. They don't want 30 plus wipes for bosses like we got in Sunwell Plateau. Not to say that the more hardcore player base doesn't deserve this kind of content geared around them, but because we are playing an older installed version of the game, that kind of content just isn't going to come around all the time. The difficulty factor is also heavily related to the next, which is the timeline. While I enjoy TOGC now, I don't know if I'm going to like it 3 months from now. ZA was fun to push for bear runs the first week, but by the end of the second month of that phase, players were ready for the next tier to come out. I view this phase very similarly. You have the similar kind of thing where, unlike bears, now we're pushing for no death attempts to get the mount and the backs to be equipped. I think people are going to find it kind of difficult at first, but over time it's going to become easier and easier and it's going to lose its appeal and interest. We have just spent like 5 to 6 months in Ulduar, and because many guilds are still running it for some hard mode items, players are getting burnt out of the Celestial raid, even though it's considered one of the best of the classic trilogy so far. TOGC adds a little bit of content, but as mentioned earlier, it's just not enough for the hardcore players to stay interested. As long as we get ICC by early to mid-September, I think everything will be okay. Then we can do Wrath from September till December or January and be ready for what comes out next, whether that's Cataclysm, Classic Plus, Season of Mastery or some variant of that, or honestly a break from WoW. Now of course Blizzard might delay ICC till October, and that will be depressing. So I'm ready to be disappointed as usual, but I'm also slightly optimistic that we get a quick release to ICC and then a longer phase there. Another topic is the lack of trash. This has divided a lot of people, but personally, I've rarely been a fan of trash in raids. Killing the same 5 types of mobs in Molten Core, Blackwing Lair Suppression Room, AQ Mindslayers after Twins, and Extremis trash yoinking people's world buffs to slow down the raid, Tempest Keep Solarian room trash, one idiot pulling extra packs in Sunwell Plateau, are all examples of really annoying trash that doesn't add to the enjoyment of the raid. I do think you need some trash to split up the raid and make it feel more varied, and they could have easily added in a little joust like trash fight, or honestly a maze to navigate through. That would have been kind of cool, and a chance to not be in the same room for the first 4 bosses. Some of the best instances like Kara and Ulduar have varied trash types and helps add to the instance's atmosphere, which I think is one of the valid complaints of this instance. You're all in one room for pretty much the entirety of the raid. Along with the fact that the lore-wise, it's pretty stupid to think that the people who conquered Ulduar, a literal prison for an old god, are going to lose to a couple of random northern beasts or the king that they defeated in 5-man. And honestly, for the perspective, players should have realized by now, Wrath doesn't have a ton of endgame content, and to an extent, a lot of the expansions, once you get leveled up to max level, have done some of the raids and gotten gear, it kind of hits that point. Most players don't want a PvP for a bunch of valid reasons, so it's raiding, achievement hunting, which you've probably already done in retail, and alts. Especially during this tier, if you raid log, you can easily fit all raid content into 1 night a week in 3 to 4 hours, or even a short amount of time if your group's pretty hardcore. Players obviously want different things. Some want a lot of content to have to cram in every week, others like to just raid log, and of course there's people in between that spectrum. I tried to have the mindset that it's okay this game doesn't take up all my time. I like doing summer stuff, traveling, playing other games, and hanging out with friends. I can raid log for 3 to 4 hours a week, do TOGC, Ulduar, and some 10-man stuff, really enjoy the time I spend raiding with my guildies and friends without feeling burnt out, and basically, I'm spending $1 per hour of fun. That's a really good investment to me. Plus, I've been playing some hardcore WoW, and there's also Classic Era and retail available should I get that itch. The splintering of the player base isn't necessarily a bad thing. You want to play Classic WoW and grind that? Go play Hardcore Era. Want to play Wrath and not do completely brain-dead raids at the cost of other content lacking? You have that option. Want more challenging content? Go try out retail. It has Mythic Plus, harder arenas, and just harder raids. The game has various levels of difficulty and challenge. It's up to the player to find what they want. In summary, I don't think TOGC is the best raid ever, but it's not an F tier like a lot of people are complaining about. Enjoy the time in the game where you don't have to grind like crazy. There are times like a hard raid or an X-Pack release where it's going to be time to play a ton. It doesn't always have to be like that. There's more to life than just WoW. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about my thoughts on TOGC or where you think the raid's going. Where do you think WoW's going to go after Wrath? Obviously we have ICC and then hopefully not too long in Ruby Sanctum. Do you want Classic Plus? Do you want a new Season of Mastery? Do you want Cataclysm? Let me know what you guys want in the comment section below. I really like discussing these things with you. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Take care. See you in the next one.